Hi, it's Phil Davis here from Harwell XPS, and in this video we're going to look at outputting data and images from Casa XPS for use in publications, reports, talks, that sort of thing. So let's start off with some data, and if I just share the Casa XPS screen. We've already talked in earlier videos about the fitting and quantification. So I'm going to assume that all of that has been done. And I've got here a set of data where we have a number of different regions that have all been fitted and quantified and that sort of thing. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about is how to output the raw data, and in particular the peaks, the curve fits that we've got. So if we look at the carbon 1s region, for example, I'm going to put them all on the screen and I'll just stagger those. There we go. Offset them is what I mean, of course. What I want to do is take that data and put it into another type of analysis software. So I use Origin a great deal. Perhaps you want to plot your data in that way. Now, Casa XPS gives you a very good tool to do that, and that is, there's a couple of different ways to get to it, but this is the one that I find easiest. I put the spectra that I'm interested in on the screen, and then I use this button here, tab, save ASCII data, and that will save all the data to a file, a CSV file, so it's just a text file. We'll call this data. And we'll save it. And it gives us two options: rows of tables, columns of tables. Rows of tables is the easiest I find to read into something like Origin or Excel, and say okay. And that is the raw data with the curves for the curve fits exported for all of these peaks. Be a little bit careful. One of the other buttons here is tab, and it suggests that you can copy the data to the clipboard. What that does is just copy the data for the first of the scans that's in this list. So this one here. So that's fine if that's all you're interested in, but usually I want to have the whole set of data. However, I would suggest that if you are trying to put the data in a form that you want to use it in a talk or in a report or even in a paper, you should consider doing that directly from Casa XPS, because there are lots of tools available within Casa XPS that allow you to set up diagrams in a way that's very much easier than much of the other software that we have available. Okay, so for example, in this set of data, I have a range of different regions. So I've got the carbon, there's the carbon, I've got cerium, I've got iron, sodium, oxygen, some interesting peaks here. And I probably want to create a diagram that shows all of those. In fact, I might want to just compare them on the screen, and Casa allows you to do that. So the first thing you do before you get to that stage is to set up the page structure that you're interested in. And that's this magic little button here. So we click on the spectra side of Casa, and we click on this button here, and we can change the page layout. Now, this is not that straightforward for me to understand. I often make a mistake, but then it's easy to go back and change. So usually the way that I want to set up my information is in a couple of different columns. So perhaps I set up 2 columns. So I'm going to have one set of data on this column, one set of data on this column, and maybe I'd like the second column. Perhaps I'm most interested in the column on the left and not so much on the ones on the right, and maybe I want to put 3 sets of data together. So what I think I'll do is I'll take the, in fact, I've already made a mistake. So I need 2 columns, that will be fine. I'll apply that. And then I'm going to want the first of those columns to be the full length of the page, and the other one I'm going to split into 2. So I'm going to click there, and I'm going to have 2 rows within that column. I'll say OK, and now you can see already it's divided the page into two. And if I choose some spectra, let's just choose 3 spectra here and insert them, you can see that it's created the page structure that I want. Now, within each of these boxes, I can now set up the image that I want to display. And it may be that you want to create a combination image. I do a lot of work with AFM. I might want to have in this box down here an AFM image. The way to do that is to take your box there and just remove that tile. And now I've got a space that I can put something in at a later date. Or I can put those back in. I know it's not going to do that. And let's just go back to my structure here and recreate that. I think it will do it this time. Yeah, there we go. Now I've got all my tiles back. Okay, so within this large column here, perhaps I want to put all the carbon spectra. So let's put those carbon spectra in there. I want to normalize them so that they are all starting from the same point. And then I'm going to offset them all, and that's looking fine. I probably want to change the spacing a bit. Now, one of the things I want to do is I don't need all this noise on the right hand side, so I'm going to go into display parameters now, and I can update a number of things about this image. So for example, I'll take that to 300, not 3000, and probably only need to plot from about 279 there. No point plotting the extra data in here, so I'll apply that. That's fine. I can label the individual spectra. Now, you may want to do that through this program. You may want to just output it and put a label on in a different program. You have the choice of putting the sample ID left or right. So if we stick it on the right and apply, that will give you, now in this set of data, I've got quite useful labels that are the right size. You can edit those, of course. Or I might want to put the experimental value variable. And let's put that on the left. And then you can see I've got my experimental variable 1, 2, 3, 4 on the spectra as well. I probably don't want to have that here. Okay. Another really useful tool that you can use here is to change the colors of your display. So for example, in this carbon, these 2 peaks that you can see at high binding energy, these are actually due to potassium, and it's the spin-wick coupling of the potassium 2p. Now, for a paper, I probably want to leave it just as it is now, but if I was giving this as a talk, I might want to highlight that these are combined. These are from the same species. So let me just close that for a moment, and I'll just open up the components box, and that's just going to be looking at one of these spectra. It's the first spectra of the list usually. And if I look at the components, you can see down here that we've got something called the component index. And I've indexed these individual peaks. So that's my 1 carbon 1s, that's another, there we've got another one, and then I've got 2 KTP, the potassium 2p peaks, and I've put those with the same computational index. So CARSA now knows that those 2 peaks can be treated the same. I've also got a Syrian peak here, which is a nice broad peak there. Okay, I'll just close that index. So you've seen that index. Now, if I go back for this window, go back to display, I can go back across to the colors, and you can see how I can create different effects. So first of all, I'm going to say color the components according to the computer index. And if I press apply, what you might be able to see, it's not very obvious, is that the potassium peaks now have the same color. Okay, well, that's, as I said, not very obvious. The next button down, combine the computation index, what that will do is instead of showing these individual components, is to combine those in one envelope. So I'll apply, and you can see the potassium, that envelope has now combined into one envelope. The individual peaks, now the carbon 1s peaks I kept with different indexes because I don't want those blended into one. Those are different states that I want to identify. So I'm keeping those separate. And then finally, if I click the fill combine components and apply, you can see that I've now colored in all the components. And that, I think, is a very nice way of putting the information into a talk, a PowerPoint slide, where you don't have a lot of time to look at the details, so you want to make an impact immediately. Okay, I'm going to take that out for the moment. So fine, there we go. Right. Now, I can now produce the same thing with the other regions. But before I do that, it's very easy to make a mistake when you're creating this diagram and lose all that information. So I recommend at this stage to save your format. And Kasa allows you to do that. Really useful tip. Save this as a tile format. So if I now save this as a TFF, at another date, or indeed with another file, I can call up this layout information that I've got so far, and it will reproduce that file exactly as I'm showing it here. Very useful for getting the same format for different sets of data, for example. Okay, so in this box, I'm going to put the Cerium 3D data. I'm going to do the same thing about normalizing it. Oops, I've accidentally normalized them all to the same area. I'm just walk that through, normalize it to that point. I'm going to offset them. That's nice. Let's put the iron 2p in here. There we go. I'll normalize to that point. Again, I can offset. Oh, that's not worked very well. Let's try normalizing to that. That's a bit better on the offset. Okay, so far so good. I can do all the things about other labels. One last thing to show you that I find very useful for creating diagrams, and that is to put some annotation in there. So let's go back to the carbon, because I think I can show it more easily with the carbon. And the annotation, the tile annotation, is with this button here, this pencil. So what I want to do is I want to create a label with a line. So I go to the text tab and I create the label I want to produce. And that label is going to be, well, I'm going to put a peak around about 288 EV in here. I'll put 288.0. It doesn't really matter at this stage what I put. I'm going to tell it to draw a line, and I'll tell it to center the text. And then I'm going to apply. And you can see it's put a label in. Actually, I was a bit disappointed with the font. We'll change that in a moment. The font is a bit big. Now, to edit that, I need to switch to annotation history, and I need to choose the particular annotation I want to edit. And you can see when I do, I've got these boxes here. Okay, so I'm going to change the font of it because, as I said, I'm not particularly happy. So I'm going to put it to 28 in this demonstration. I don't really need it as bold, so I'll just put it as regular. Say okay, and when I apply, that's good. And then I don't really want it lying across my diagram. Of course, I want to put it as a label indicating one of these peaks. So let's do that. So I'm going to take the top level here, and then I can move it, and you can see the binding energy that this label is going to be, and you can see the height. So the binding energy is going to be, well, you can see I've got this 288.46. You can move it 1 pixel over and it's 4.1. So 4.5, that will do, right? 288.5. So one end of that label has gone down. Now I can shift the base, and I need to make it a straight line. I just need to find exactly the same position on the binding energy scale. I'll release it. Away, and there's my label, and that will now appear on my set of spectra in my diagram. That's a useful way. Of course, the label now is not correct, so again, just make sure you choose the correct label, and then you can edit it to be 288.5 EV. Of course, we don't want to go to 2 decimal places with this. That's really not appropriate. And okay, so there is my diagram, my finished diagram. There's lots of details that I would like to mess with this, but I won't do that now. And what I want to do now is output that diagram to Word or to PowerPoint or something like that. So the way you can do that is if I want to copy an individual tile, so just the carbon spectra, click on the tile and then click on this button here, and it will copy this as an EMF, and that will copy just that tile. Or click on the scrolled list and that will copy all the tiles that you've got. Just be a little careful. Sometimes Casa will create tiles below the level of the screen. You'll see that from a scroll bar that appears on the right here. And when you copy the scroll list, it'll copy all the tiles. You can easily delete a tile as I've shown you. So copy our image. Now, the image size that you get, you can either copy the tile size you've got, or you can specify what size you want, whichever you prefer. I like to specify the size I've got, so I'm just going to copy that, use image size, and that now is there ready for me to paste into a document like Word or PowerPoint. Okay, that's all I've got for this moment, so I'm going to stop at that point and wish you happy drawing.